Today I'm going to talk to you about culturally relevant education, along with a few concepts that are interrelated and almost interchangeable with culturally relevant education, which are culturally relevant pedagogy and culturally responsive teaching. Let me start by telling you a story. Imagine you're a teacher in a classroom of diverse students. Some of the students in your classroom are African American, some are Latino, and some are white. And as a class, you are working on spelling words. So what you do is you write them on the board, and then they'd copy them down, and then they'd use it in a sentence, and in a few days, they'd have a test. But for some reason, this is just not working. So you begin to use the spelling words in a game form, as well as maybe reciting them in a poem with some rhythm. And when you make this switch, significant improvements are made in your class. Why is this? Because your strategies that you're using are of culturally relevant education. So what is culturally relevant education? I'll tell you what it's not. It's not just content integration, and it's not simply mentioning or talking about Africa or Mexico within your content. Another thing that it's not using racial pride as a motivator, and it's also not a performance by the teacher. These things may be helpful in teaching, but they're not what culturally relevant education is all about. Now, I still haven't told you exactly what culturally relevant education is. So simply put, it's just good teaching. More specifically, it's teaching that has been proven to be successful with students of color and students in poverty and of low socioeconomic status. Many diverse students come from cultures with roots stemming from oral traditions. This is when the learning takes place orally and actively, and it's true for many racial groups today, including African American, Latino, Southeast Asian, and Pacific Islander. Gloria Ladson-Billings is a pedagogical theorist who has conducted significant research in the area of culturally relevant education. For 3 years, she studied teachers in a California district which served primarily African American students. These specific teachers were nominated by both principals and parents as the best teachers in the district. To describe these teachers' successful strategies, Ladson-Billings used the term culturally relevant pedagogy. There are 3 principles for culturally relevant pedagogy. The first is students must experience academic success. Second, students must develop and maintain their cultural competence. Third, students must develop a critical consciousness to challenge the status quo. So now I'll walk you through each one. First, students must experience academic success. This is exactly what it sounds like. As a result of culturally relevant education practices, students will be able to develop their skills that are related to literacy, mathematics, social skills, and technology. Second, students must develop and maintain their cultural competence. The teachers in the study used students' culture as a foundation to build off of. So whether it was using rhythm or previous cultural knowledge, or maybe even their cultural traditions. Third, students must develop a critical consciousness to challenge the status quo. These excellent teachers made their students conscious of broader views in order that those students were able to develop their abilities to challenge the way things that are run and the way that systems work. In order to apply all of these things, you have to believe in your students, and you can't set low expectations for them. You can't let their test scores define who they are as students, and you must take the time to learn about your students and about their lives and what each of them are able to bring to the classroom. Zaretta Hammond is an English teacher who has studied this topic in the form of culturally responsive teaching. She outlines the specifics on how to teach in this way and offering a few tips and strategies that put this pedagogy into practice. Her first tip was to gamify it. Make it a game. It'll catch your students' attention, and most games actually use cultural tools and the tools from oral traditions, such as repetition, problem solving, and making connections. Her next tip was to make it social. So by making it social in your classroom, you're able to build community between your students, and the students are able to interact with each other in a way that they can learn from each other. It even adds a competitive aspect to the atmosphere. Our last tip was storify it. Make it a story. It's exactly what I did at the beginning when I told you a story that captured your attention about being a teacher. Stories are embedded in cultural traditions, and our brains are even wired to remember stories. These strategies that I mentioned are not just for minority students, but they're helpful for all students. This poster was made in response to Ladson-Billings pedagogy, and it embodies what I said before. Cultural relevant education, simply put, is that it's just good teaching.